Hello everyone. Today's topic, which I'm going to discuss, is problems with communication. Now for this video, I'm mainly just going to talk specifically about speaking as a problem. The first problem with communication is that there is a disconnect in the languages that we speak. Now, I'm not talking just about like Spanish to English or other specific languages. I'm talking about how my English language and my understanding of the language may differ from yours. You may be wondering what I actually mean by that. Well, let me explain. You see, we all grow up in different ways, mainly learning to speak from our parents or others that are around us. Now, we may have uniform dictionaries that we could read from to get a book definition of the words we speak, but assumedly, none of us have read the whole dictionary for every word that we think we know. And even if we did, there would still be differences between the people who haven't read that dictionary and the people who have. Many of us assume that just because we say the same words and know the same words, that we also understand them the same way too, which would be a wrong assumption to make. Let me list here a few examples of words that have probable differences that vary from person to person. Like science. Some people believe that science is only what you observe, test, and are able to identify, but other people believe that hypotheses and other factual guesses based on such facts are also part of science and can be used under that same terminology. There's wise. Some people believe that if you have wisdom, you're wise. Other people believe they have to use the wisdom or tell about the wisdom. Having knowledge is another thing. Do we determine knowledge as important and useful, or is knowledge just any piece of information we can get, such as like my birthday or something? There's faith. Some people vary on that. Trust, perfection. Some people believe that perfection is never making a mistake, while others, like me, believe that perfection is more of non-sinning. There's honesty. Some people have a warped perception of honesty or different. Some people have different understanding of fairness. Does the person who is rich have to pay the same taxes or not? One example that would apply directly to me is the word original. I used to think that that meant something that's been done before, which means it's unoriginal, which is basically the complete opposite of the meaning of the word original. But for a long time I used to think that, but I wasn't really completely sure, but I never really used it too much and just never really came up enough. But these are just a few examples of words that we could have completely different understanding of, and each person may vary, like I said, just based on their experiences and who they were taught by. Now, those may be some things that are misunderstood in definition, but some things may differ from person to person in extension, such as like games. Some people believe that there has to be a lot more interactivity with games in order for it to be called a game, while others think that if you hold a controller and are interacting with it in any way, that it's considered a game. There's racism. Some people believe that if you even just mention someone's different skin color, then that's racist, while others believe that it's more of a discrimination thing, doing something that puts one person above another. There's free will. Some people have different perceptions on that, what life is or what an animal is. Now, before I go on to my next topic, I would like to talk about a way to possibly minimize this problem. Now, what could really help others know what you are talking about is by defining your terms on anything that might be controversial or not commonly used words. Also, only use words if you're sure of what they mean. They may sound like they make sense to you, but can really confuse another person who knows them differently. The second form of miscommunication comes from trying to understand the words used in the context of a sentence or a story. This is actually a huge problem that can come up many times in a single conversation. Let me first give a specific example here. Johnny owns an apple farm with thousands of apples. Bob is a poor man who struggles for food. If Bob is given 5 apples from Johnny, was he given a lot of apples or a little bit of apples? Well, it depends on whose perspective you view it from. Bob would say he was given a lot of apples, considering that he has been poor and that's a lot to him. But Johnny would say he gave Bob a few apples because he has a lot, and that's only a tiny portion of what he has. Now do you see? Our conversations, words, and thoughts are not just from a general perspective, they are actually from our own perspective, and will tend to be presented as such, then interpreted through the other person's perspective. If I say something like, I talked to my friend the other day, it could be interpreted as a 2-minute conversation saying hi and then bye, or it could be a few hours of conversation where we really get in depth into what's been going on to each other's lives. I could say I had fun doing something, but how much fun did I really have? Because fun is such a huge scale. It could be anywhere from slightly enjoyable to something that I'd love to do basically every single day. This type of miscommunication is common because to the person talking, it is obvious what they mean because they were there, they experienced it, they know what degree of enjoyment or whatever it is they're talking about they had and believe that they may be saying it and getting it across as such, even though they're just using a simple word that could mean anywhere from one point to another. This problem can be minimized, however, by the use of descriptive words. Let me give you a story here to show you how descriptions can really help. I was walking and a dog bit my hand. Now again, with a description. I was walking and a cute little dog nibbled on my hand. Now again, with a different description. I was walking and a big ferocious dog jumped at me and chomped my hand with huge force. I was walking and a dog bit my hand is what happened in both stories, but the description changes what you actually understand from that story, and it tells a lot more about what really did happen. So using descriptions, our more accurate words such as nibble instead of bite can really help others know what you are talking about. Also, understand that others who you are talking to could have many faulty assumptions about a story or a sentence from simply lack of understanding or faulty understanding from your words. The third and final form of miscommunication that I'll be explaining here today is our emotional disconnect between each other. This disconnect is because of the unexplainable, unique feelings we all have and can't really share with each other easily. This is something that I'm sure all of you have probably noticed and had to deal with at one point or another. It could have been from a great loss, anxieties, fears, excitement, or even some pleasure and enjoyment. I do not feel that this needs a full explanation, but just know that using descriptive words, any and all that you could think of, will not truly get across your feelings and will not make the other person feel the same way that you do. When someone tells us of their misery, you may say things like, I understand, or I know what you mean, but we will not feel how the other is feeling. We may hear and understand the words, and we may have gone through a situation that was similar to the other person's, but every person has their own unique feelings on the situations that may be similar. Not only that though, but each person may deal with the same emotional trauma in different ways, and we see how this person is dealing with it. They may be joking about it, someone else may sulk over a similar thing, or yet someone else might be completely ignorant of the fact, but they all could be going through the same internal pains. Yet when we see someone who's sulking and a lot more broken up about something that just happened, we'll assume that they are more broken up about what happened, even though each person has their own unique way of dealing with things. Now, let me next share with you a way to decrease the amount of emotional disconnect between our emotions and what others understand about how we feel. This is not simple, but it can be somewhat effective if done right. And this method is telling a story, a different story. And to explain this, let me turn your attention to the Bible and to the genius of Jesus. Now, Jesus, who is God, had truthfully stated that his ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts higher than our thoughts. Isaiah 55, 8-9 explains this. Yet, when he speaks to us, and especially when he came down to this earth as human, how could he get us to understand to any degree what he was feeling while he's sitting on his throne watching us and caring for us? Through parables. He could have just said that he searches for and tries to save the lost, but that wouldn't have really gotten across how he actually feels about us and how he actually cares for us. So instead, he talked about a man with 100 sheep and leaving his flock to find a single lost sheep and rejoicing over the found sheep more than he rejoices over the 99 sheep who did not go astray, which is Matthew 18:12-14 explains this. He could have just said that he wants you to come back when you wander off, but instead he told of a son that was given a portion of the father's wealth, left his father, and spent all his money whimsically, and came back ready to be a servant if the dad would let him. But the father saw him whom he had been searching for, and threw a party for him with what he still had. Luke 15:11-32 is where the story could be found. Jesus told parables to help us to even begin to understand his feelings and his love for us. It was what he knew would work for us. And if you ever seen a good movie or a good book, you may develop connections with the characters and relations within your own life that could relate to these characters. My reason for bringing all this up is because if you tell someone about your own life from your own perspective and they try to analyze it with their mind, they will not get an equal feeling from you who is telling it. But if you create the middle grounds, aka story, you can create a place where it is not from your own experience, but a point from where, if you think about it, that story that you made up gives you the same emotional connections, or at least similar to your own story when you think about it with your own experiences. Now, if the other person then hears this story that you made up, he may develop similar or the same emotional feelings that you felt when you thought about the story, which were same or similar to the feelings that you had in your own experiences. Another point I want to mention along the same topic is whenever we talk about an activity we did, such as jogging, gaming, traveling, sports, or watching shows, or etc., and tell someone about how much fun we had or how much we hated doing the things, there will be an emotional disconnect between the teller and the listener, because the person who hears it could have done the same things without the same level of emotions or the same emotions at all. And also, when you explain about experiences you have using stories that you create up, don't forget that there could be emotional disconnect between the story elements you add in, like if you were to add in gaming because you love gaming and you want to explain about a great time you had doing something else, it may not translate well and just create more confusion between the two people speaking. But unfortunately, these are only possible partial solutions, and they will not actually close the gap between each other's minds. We all just reside in our own mind and can't share with each other our true mental thoughts. As for we have vivid imagery in our own heads, and our whole life that we have lived through and learned from, and that cannot be expressed or shared through simple words. Again, we are just trapped in our own interpretation of our reality, never breaking free from our own warped, individualized, self-referential views. But wait, there is one who knows and understands the words we say before we say them, and even knows the thoughts we have before we think them, whose name is God. Psalm 139, 1-6. He is the one who gives us breath and ability to think. He is the one who is above all and in control of all. So if he wants us to understand each other, then he has the power to make it so. and that is the God who we serve, the one with power and the only one who can, does, and will know and understand you fully. So that is where I will end it for now. Thank you all for listening. Feel free to share any more insight you may have on the subject, and I look forward to learning from all of you.